Okay, I make it 5 p.m. London time, 12 noon Toronto, New York time. So my name is Andrew Thake from Minds and Money. Hello and welcome to this week's Minds and Money 5 at 5 show, which is today sponsored by the Dundee Corporation and is brought to you in association with Resource Global Network. For those who are attending 5 at 5 for the first time, the aim of 5 at 5 guests at 5 p.m. is to maintain engagement between investors and miners through a lively interactive format whilst we wait the return of physical events that will hopefully be soon happening in hopefully like Q4 of this year. A few admin announcements before we start. To make the session as interactive as possible, please have your videos switched on. To ask a question, you have two options. You can either submit them via the chat function, which you can ask at the bottom of the screen there, or you can wave your hands via the invite participants function. I can then go and unmute you and you can ask your question live. For today's show, we have a great lineup of guests. They are Chmelauskas, Chief Executive Officer of Camino Corp, Grant Mourre, Chief Executive Officer and Director of SPC Nickel, Jessup, Chief Executive Officer and Director of Magna Mining, Igor, Corporate and Business Development from Atico Mining, and your host, Dundee Goodman, President and Chief Executive Officer of Dundee Corporation and Dundee Goodman Merchant Partners. A warm welcome to you, Jonathan. What have you got in store for us today?
Well, I think we have four very interesting companies. We've called it the Battery Metals Panel. I think, I think that's not a bad start, but I think at Dundee Corporation and Dundee Goodman Merchant Partners, we've made the decision to focus our whole business on mining and investing in the mining sphere. And the rationale for that is twofold. And for many years, we've always talked about the gold story, and the reason for gold, and the fact that even through this pandemic is that countries are borrowing more than ever, and all of the things about gold it's probably a better story today than it's ever been. But the other side of the business, which is we don't give that as much talk, it's probably worth getting more airtime, which is the fact that we're living in a world that really does want to wean itself off of oil and gas. And you've heard all of these companies declare we're going to be net zero carbon by 2050, and not everyone really understands the dramatic shift and how short a time period that is. But so you think of all of the power grids, and we're all spending much more time at our houses, and we have the lights and all that. But then no one's really thought about the fact that if every car is going to be a battery automobile, which is what people are thinking. So not only do our power grids have to power all our homes and all the growth in population and the more new homes, they're going to also have to power every car, because you're going to come home and plug your car into the same power grid that your house runs off of. So we're going to not just need to replace all of our carbon-based energy, we're going to need a lot more of it, a lot more energy and power. So, and when you look at all of the different solutions to non-carbon, mining.
C'est des Muskelkater.
We have to ask someone to mute there.
Yeah, I think we may have somebody who there just needs to mute themselves, please.
Mais tu regardes même plus les actualités maintenant?
Mais non, parce que si je le sport, je peux pas.
Oh, mais là,
In France.
I'm just looking for our French attendee, and I can't seem to find anyone.
Harry, if we could ask you, s'il vous plaît.
c'est pas pareil. Mais
If I can just ask that person to go mute. If somebody can hear me, they can please mute themselves.
So I believe under the name Harry.
Harry, can you please mute your line?
oui, bon ben.
Okay, well, I'm just.
Est-ce que c'est trop tôt? Peut-être trop tôt, non?
Hey, Andrew, I think you might be able to mute him on your end if you're the host.
Yeah, I think I'm just trying to work out just how to go and do that. So apologies for that. Sort of joys of I think the person has disappeared. So I do apologize to listeners for that. That doesn't often happen. It does sometimes. Joys of doing things live. So can I go back to you again, Jonathan? Apologies to our audience.
No worries. And what I was really trying to say is that just about every solution to carbon-based power relies on mining, most to a very high effect. So we see a lot of opportunities for all mining moving forward. And today, I think we're hosting 4 companies. We've invested in all 4 of these companies in varying degrees. We're excited for the prospects for all 4 of these companies. And what I want to do is get it over and let each of these CEOs tell their story. And from there, we'll once we've got them all done, we'll open it up to some questions. But we think the next 20 years is going to be the era of the miner. So with that in mind, I think we're going to start with Igor Dutina of Atico Mining.
Thank you very much, Jonathan, and very good introduction into the segue. I couldn't agree more with everything you've said in regards to battery metals, and specifically in our case, copper. We think that the opportunity is right now, and we're entering the right cycle. So before I get into the presentation, just wanted to quickly caution everyone that I will be making some forward-looking statements during this time. Atico is a junior copper gold producer. Atico was founded by the same group that founded Fortuna Silver Mines, and it is our strategy to replicate the Fortuna Silver business model, but hopefully also their success, and that's to look for opportunities to grow the company not only organically but through M&A. We think we've taken a great first step towards this goal with our flagship asset, the El Roble mine. And most recently, we've acquired a second asset called the La Plata project in Ecuador, which is a late stage asset that we're currently taking through feasibility and hoping to replicate the success we had at El Roble with La Plata as well. On top of that, we're also looking to grow the company through strategic M&A. We're looking for high margin opportunities that can be accretive to all of our current and future investors. Real quickly, I'll touch base on El Roble. El Roble has been in production for over 30 years. It's a mine that's been generating very healthy cash flows through the up and down cycle. What you see in the bottom right-hand side of the slide is what we managed to do since we took over this operation back in 2013. We've grown copper production over 14.5 times and gold production over 5.5 times, while very importantly increasing not only environmental health and safety and operating standards, but also transforming the entire organization in Colombia to adhere to international standards where we think most mining companies are going towards. Key thing to mention here is that it's a very high grade operation, and what you see in the bottom left hand side of the slide is the current reserves at the steady state rate. We have roughly around 3.5 years life of mine remaining ahead of us. Of course, the goal for the next 24 months will be to invest significant resources into growing that resource base at this project. A bit on the financial performance behind the operation in Colombia. What you see on this slide is the trailing 12 months, so the last 4 reported quarters. And I just want to emphasize here that the net realized price for these financial metrics was $3.20 for copper and roughly around $18.25 per ounce of gold. So as you can see, a very robust, high margin operation. Of course, gold and copper are higher today, especially copper is closer to $4.50. So the numbers will adjust appropriately, especially if we maintain this momentum for the next 12 months. So what you have is a very high margin mine generating significant cash flows. And now what we're doing is looking to redeploy those cash flows into growing not only the El Roble mine, but also advancing and hoping to go into construction in our second asset, which I will get into later. At the El Roble mine, we have two opportunities for growth. One is directly at the mine itself. The deposit remains open at depth and along strike. But also what you see on this slide, on the right-hand side, this is the 6,300 hectare land package. It's a very large land package that is fully controlled by us. This is a package that we have spent significant work on at the surface, but have just recently started exploring underground. What you see here is a 10-kilometer trend that passes north to south of our properties. This is a favorable geological formation where the basalt and the black chert coincide with one another, and it's exactly at that point where the mineralization is occurring at the El Roble mine. Well, on top of this trend, we have identified over 21 drill targets where we have at surface geophysical and geochemical results coinciding with one another. And this gives us, we think, ample of opportunity to discover an additional deposit here at this property. Of course, this is a VMS. VMSs tend to come in clusters, and what we have right now is one VMS at the center of a very large land package. The plan is for this year, beyond drilling underground, we're planning to invest about 18,000 meters of drilling, so 18 kilometers of drilling, which is the single largest drill campaign that this company has ever undertaken at this property, to look for the next deposit. With that, we think we can drill between 3 to 4 targets per year. Now, of course, we know that not all 21 targets are going to be explained by a VMS, but here all we need is 1 or 2 to be a game changer. And given that this is an operating asset, from the moment of discovery to the moment where we're mining from that potential discovery is anywhere from 18 to 24 months. And it's all within trucking distance. So we think that this is a very prospective, organic opportunity and the upside at this property for our investors and future investors. Now, diving into our second opportunity, and this is a up-and-coming asset in Latin America. We're currently moving this along in parallel with the El Roble mine, where right now we own 60% of the asset. We have the ability to earn up to 75% of the asset by delivering a feasibility study and a financing package for the construction. Of course, this is a VMS as well. We have been working at this asset since 2019 and have invested a significant amount of effort and resources to take it through feasibility and hopefully through construction in the near term. This asset is something that we think will provide significant growth for the company. It's something that's near term and something that's, I will say, still very underexplored given the opportunities we see. So on this slide is the 2 million tons. As you can see, it's a very high grade, close to 13 grams per ton gold equivalent. But of course, that's broken down into the 4 metals that you see on the left-hand side of the slide. Similar to El Roble, high-grade copper, but here we also have very high-grade gold and also zinc, which we don't have at the El Roble mine to this extent. So we think the margin at this asset could be even greater than what we see at the El Roble mine. And of course, we anticipate that the costs could be lower given the fact that we'll be building this mine from scratch. Now, we also see tremendous upside here. We think this is a very good starting point. We've been investing a lot in the infill drill program to upgrade the inferred resources into measured and indicated. And while doing so for the past 12 months, we've identified additional opportunities for discovering more resources here. And specifically here in between the two ore bodies, but on top of that to the north and the depth, we think this deposit will continue to grow in the coming months. Of course, we're looking at fast tracking the feasibility and permitting of this asset to hopefully be in construction at some point in late 2022. So to summarize, the company has a very strong cash flow underpinning all of our growth prospects. Of course, we have opportunity for organic growth at both assets, at La Plata and at El Roble. Once La Plata is in construction, we anticipate that our revenue and free cash flow will significantly increase, giving the opportunity for the company to continue looking for pipeline projects and further growth, looking to grow into a mid-tier producer. Thank you, and I'll open it up to questions right now.
Do we have any questions for Igor?
Yeah, just kind of one some question in. Ecuador as a mining jurisdiction, what's it like?
We think Ecuador is a young but a jurisdiction with a lot of perspective. Basically, the situation has continuously evolved towards the positive over the past decade, I will say. More specifically, the last 5 years. We've had 2 modern mines go into production, Fruta del Norte and the copper Exa project in the southeast part of Ecuador. We believe that the government is serious about granting permits for construction and operation for advanced stage assets. As they have communicated to us, La Plata, our second asset, is considered a second generation asset in Ecuador, which means they are in line to receive their permit. We anticipate that you're gonna see a lot of additional growth and investment into the jurisdiction. Prime example, Dundee Precious Metals recently acquired, or is in the process of acquiring, INV, which is another mid-tier company moving into the space. And we think you're going to see even more M&A activity there in the coming years.
Any other questions for?
Yeah, there's a couple of questions here. What do you think the this actually may have a speak question for Chair as well, actually. But hi, Igor, what do you think about the long-term outlook for copper prices, and where are your buyers located?
So I'll start with the second part of the question first. We have a offtake agreement with Trafigura, and they sell most of our concentrates to China at this time. In regards to the copper market, I think everybody here on this call can agree that for the past decade, the entire space has been completely underinvested in. There has been very little discovery made, and one can argue at this stage there are no major underdeveloped assets that can make a significant contribution to the supply side, and so we see tremendous growth in demand in electrification, and what the green movement that Jonathan mentioned earlier in the call is going to require to be successful. We anticipate that to fuel that, to provide that type of a supply, we think that the copper price is going to need to be a lot higher to stimulate growth, and we anticipate that over the next decade, copper should continue to trend higher. Of course, there could be months and years where we have a bit of a pullback, but the overall trajectory should be higher.
And there's one other question from the chat line, which wants to know how many tons per day are you planning for the mine in Ecuador, and do you have any preliminary estimates of capital cost?
So at this moment, we're still working on detailed feasibility, if you will, on these items. The idea is going to be somewhere between 800 and 1,000 tons per day. And we anticipate that the costs should be lower than what they are at our Colombia asset, El Roble mine. And for reference, we're operating at roughly around 105 to $108 per ton in Colombia.
Those are US dollars, right?
US dollars, correct. Thank you, Jonathan.
All right. Any other questions for Igor? Okay, well, I think we're gonna move on then to Jason Jessup of Magna Mining. Jason,
Thank you
welcome.
very much, Jonathan. So Magna Mining is a very new company in the public market. We've been trading for about a month under the ticker symbol NICU on the TSXV. I'd like to caution the viewers that there will be some forward-looking statements in this presentation. So Magna Mining is a Sudbury-focused nickel copper PGM exploration and development company. Back in 2016, I was working with some colleagues formerly that would work together at FNX Mining here in Sudbury. And we really saw an opportunity to create a new exploration and development focused company here in the Sudbury Basin and recreate some of the success that we had with FNX in the past. And with that, we formed the company and started looking at projects in the region. And the project that really stood out for us is our flagship, the Shakespeare project. Shakespeare is a past producing operation that produced through toll milling. We do have major permits for the construction of a 4,500 ton per day open pit mine mill and tailing storage facility. And we have a current NI 43-101 resource. I think all of that makes us very uniquely positioned to have the potential for a fast track to production. And this is utilizing or potentially utilizing infrastructure that's already in the region, such as 2 existing mills that have excess capacity, as well as the current status of the project in the past production history. So we will be evaluating these types of opportunities throughout the course of this year, as well as looking to update our feasibility study that was used in 2006 for the current permits. All that being said, our focus over the near term will be on exploration to both grow our existing resource at Shakespeare, test some of our footwall targets at the deposit, as well as testing a number of regional targets throughout our large land package we think have tremendous potential for discovery. So for just a bit of background on Sudbury, I've been living in Sudbury for 20 years, spent part of my career with Inco and then a good portion with FNX Mining, and I still live in Sudbury. In blue, you can see location of Magna's property package, 180 square kilometers right off the west end of the Sudbury Basin, in close proximity to a lot of the major infrastructure such as Vale's Clarabelle Mill, Glencore's Strathcona Mill, as well as both Glencore and Vale smelters. Sudbury is a very active mining camp. I think it's one of the best mining camps for nickel in the world. It's been operating continuously for over 100 years and is still, developing new projects. And it also has a very, very supportive community. Having been mining for so long, the community understands the importance of mining. It's in a great political jurisdiction with a supportive government. And, this includes the First Nations in the region. And we're very proud and fortunate to have an impact benefit agreement signed with the Sagamok First Nations, who are very supportive partners of Magna and the Shakespeare project, and really look forward to seeing it advance. So we think this is one of the main reasons why we're so focused on the Sudbury region. It has great geological potential. We really understand how to explore and develop and operate mines in the region. And it has been dominated by 3 majors in the past, primarily 2, Inco and Falconbridge, and now Vale and Glencore, as well as KGHM, who purchased the former FNX assets. So it is a tough jurisdiction to get into. And again, we're quite fortunate to have a large land package and a lot of opportunity to grow both our existing deposit as well as make some other discoveries. So currently, as I mentioned, we've been public for about 1 month, and concurrent with that go public, we raised $7 million, and we are focused on exploration over the next 6 to 9 months. And we're currently underway with a 9,000 meter drill program, and 6,000 meters of that are focused on expanding resources at Shakespeare, as well as testing some of our near mine targets. The drilling that started in the last month has been focused in this gap zone area, and the gap zone is an area between our west deposit and our east deposit. And prior to us acquiring Ursa Major Minerals in the Shakespeare project in 2017, the resource was cut off right about here, if you can see my cursor on the screen, in the east deposit. And the previous geological model depicted that this would be an unmineralized breccia area, and it was actually the west deposit was cut off somewhere here. So there was a big, large gap area. Through good geological work, mapping, looking at the historical data, and doing some additional borehole geophysics in 2018, we didn't believe that previous geological model and went about to testing it. So we had a 3,800 meter drill program in 2018, and we're successful in extending the mineralization from the east deposit out further. So what we're doing right now is following up on that, drilling in this gap zone area. And our hopes are that by adding additional resources in this area through future resource updates, that we'll be able to encompass all of the open pit resource in one resource pit shell. And hopefully that'll allow us to capture more mineralization that currently is in the resource but falls outside of the open pit component. The other area that we'll be testing is in the footwall, and this is a fairly large deposit globally in indicated, inferred, both underground and open pit categories. It's about 21.4 million tons, with 14.4 million tons of that in the open pit indicated category. And it has a strike length of approximately 1.7 kilometers. So it's already a big deposit, and we think it can grow larger. But the footwall area is really unexplored. In 1949, Falconbridge drilled 3 holes into the footwall. The first hole was the S13, and it intersected a 103 meter composite intersection of nickel copper mineralization. And that was followed up by 2 additional holes, S14 and 15, and S15 hit approximately 15 meters of nickel copper mineralization. Again, no assays for precious metals or cobalt. And then that was it. There's never been any follow-up since then in the footwall. And any of the footwall holes that have been drilled have only gone in just past the deposit by 30 or 40 meters. So we've taken a really hard look at this and tried to understand what is the geological model and where did the mineralization at Shakespeare come from. And we have some geophysical evidence that seems to support the belief that there was an intrusion, an event that came in from the footwall side. And we think that the Shakespeare deposit, as we know it today, might just be the disseminated halo around a much bigger deposit. So I mentioned that there was some geophysical evidence supporting why we're testing these areas in the footwall. And just prior to us acquiring Ursa Major Minerals, there was a very detailed airborne VTEM gravity and mag survey flown over the entire property. We received all this data and it was uninterpreted. So we spent some time interpreting it, understanding it, first looking at the VTEM, because electromagnetics is one of the best tools in the Sudbury Basin that's used to find sulfide deposits. But then after we had done that, we looked at the gravity data. And when we did the gravity data inversion, one of the things that really stood out to us is there was a very dense body of rock, a very significant gravity anomaly in the footwall of the east deposit, starting at about 300 meters below surface and going down below 700 meters. And this gravity anomaly really was difficult to explain it. The theory that we've come up with is that this could represent the feeder system for the Shakespeare intrusion. And if this is actually the base of the intrusion, then it could be a place where sulfides would settle out, and we could have semi-massive to massive sulfides. Now that is a theory, and it's at a depth that previously there wasn't any electromagnetic evidence to support that. In 2019, we did sampling on, or did some stripping on surface, removed the overburden, recognized a type of rock that was very interesting. It was described as a mega breccia, and this was a rock type that hadn't been previously recognized at Shakespeare. And wrapping around this mega breccia again, it's a very different style of mineralization than what we would typically see in the Shakespeare deposit. Shakespeare is typically a 1-to-1 nickel to copper ratio with PGMs. And this mineralization is a 1-to-4 nickel to copper ratio with elevated PGMs. And the reason we found this very interesting, first of all, there's something geochemically happening in the footwall, which is good because that's an indication we could find much different mineralization, potentially, much higher concentrations of metals and much higher grades. But it also was coincidentally very similar to the ratios of metals we'd see in the Sudbury Basin around the footwall deposits, which are typically very high copper, high PGM with a nickel byproduct type deposits. And at FNX, we were very successful in discovering a number of these types of deposits and mining them very profitably. So this is, again, very supports our belief that there's something very interesting happening in the footwall area. So part of the 6,000 meter budget that we have for around Shakespeare will be looking at understanding and testing these areas. Now, we have done some EM geophysics from surface, and we do have some EM responses in the footwall. We're having a bit of a challenge at the moment trying to filter out the response we get from the main deposit to target very accurately where these EM plates could be located. They could be interpreted in a number of areas. So just recently, we have deepened a couple of these holes, a few hundred meters into the footwall, and we have Crone Geophysics doing geophysics this week on site, borehole geophysics, which will better help us define these EM plates, and then hopefully we'll be testing them in July and August. So this is really exciting for us. We think it's the most practical, pragmatic approach, and we're very fortunate to be able to get the timing right to have the geophysics company come in and do these surveys very promptly. So this is our plan over the next couple months at the Shakespeare deposit. As well, we have a number of regional targets over our large land package. It's 180 square kilometers. It's quite significant. As I mentioned, there was a geophysical survey done before, and from this, we've modeled 12 EM plates, VTEM EM plates across the property that have never been drill tested and are within 200 meters of surface. Some of these EM plates are high conductance and indicative of massive sulfides. And 3 of them in particular that we spent some time doing groundwork on have mineralization in close proximity or in the region that give us additional optimism that these plates could represent nickel copper type deposits. One of them is the Hanover, which is an EM plate not far off our access road that has disseminated chalcopyrite PGM mineralization 50 meters away from the EM plate on surface. The P4 target is 2 EM plates, very similar geology to what we see at Shakespeare on a magnetic trend, just about 5 kilometers away from Shakespeare. Again, 2 EM plates, fairly high conductance in the right kind of gabbros. And there is evidence about half a kilometer away of some nickel copper PGM type mineralization, low grades, but again, shows us these are the type of rocks that could host those metals. So again, this is one of the target areas we'll be testing with 3,000 meters of the 9,000 meter program. And the other area that we're actually drilling this week as we're doing the borehole EM work at Shakespeare is our Springer extension. And the Springer showing is a massive sulfide vein on surface that's 20 to 30 centimeters wide that was discovered in the 1960s. And it has a strike length on surface of about 25 meters. And we sampled it in 2018, and it came back with samples of 7 to 8% copper and a half a gram to a gram of gold. So it does carry some significant copper values, and there is a small EM plate associated with it. But about 150 meters away at a depth of about 150 meters, there's a large EM plate, 200 meters by 300 meters, electromagnetically open at depth. And we think this could represent another similar type system to the Springer showing, but again, never been drill tested and potentially could be much larger. So we're really excited to be testing that over the next 2 weeks. So I guess just to recap, and I hope I haven't taken up too much of the time, but yeah, we are underway with our 9,000 meter drill program. We're hoping to have that completed by the end of August, and 6,000 meters approximately be allocated to Shakespeare, 3,000 meters to regional targets. And we will be looking at options for a start to production, either through a toll milling or using our own processing plant and permits, or to construct our own processing plant as per our permits. And we are looking to update the feasibility study that our permits were based upon sometime towards the end of this year. So it's going to be a busy year for us. There's a lot going on, and we're really excited. This has been a company that's been around since 2016 and a private company for 4 years. So finally, it's great to be public, to be cashed up and ready to execute.
Wonderful. Thank you. Do you have any questions for Jason?
Yeah, just to give a quick question. I see that your company is carbon neutral. I'm just curious, how kind of common is that amongst companies such as yours to be carbon neutral?
Well, it isn't very common to our knowledge. I think we are the only nickel exploration carbon neutral company right now. And really where this came about was we were asked the question, are you planning on becoming a carbon neutral mining company someday? And what is your current carbon impact? And these were questions at the time, I couldn't really answer. So we did, we hired a consultant, we got educated on ESG, and through that process, it became very clear that, this is important. It's something we should understand. It's something we should strive towards, becoming carbon neutral. And once we knew what our actual current carbon impact is for year to date, and then estimated for the rest of the year, it made sense to us to purchase some carbon credits and offset our current carbon emissions, so that we can not just talk about it, but actually take action and start building a culture of doing things right and building towards a carbon neutral mine in the future.
Okay. There's also just maybe there's time for one more quick question that's been sent in before we need to move on. I presume it's related to your presentation. Why is there a valley called Palladium Valley? Was palladium there in the area historically?
So that's another interesting exploration area, and I didn't get into it. It isn't associated with the NEM plate, but that's a 3-kilometer trend on the property that is low sulfide, high PGM type mineral occurrences, and we've sampled samples on surface that were very low sulfide. They really didn't look like much, but had upwards of 9 grams of palladium plus platinum and gold, with a small amount of copper and nickel. But it is a very interesting area that is, we would call it still early exploration, but there's a number of those types of surface showings, and it's a distinctly different style of mineralization from Shakespeare. And it is an area we will be doing some work on later in the year, but it's still pretty early stage to understand the geology of it.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I don't see any other questions, so I'm just gonna, rather than ask a question, make a point, because I think that people often don't understand the potential of Sudbury and the Sudbury region. Is that in your presentation, you pointed out that there's been 40 billion pounds of nickel mined and about 36 billion pounds of copper mined. Now that's the stuff that's been mined. That doesn't include the stuff that will be mined and has been delineated. And we know there's big deposits like Victoria out there that haven't been mined yet. But that is about $485 billion of metal mined at today's metal prices. That's like $500 billion to be a little more succinct, US dollars. There are very few mining camps anywhere in the world that can boast this type of output. And when you look at that whole Sudbury region and recognize that you're talking about a city that's done tremendous amounts of environmental remediation, has a very strong community support for mining, very strong relationships with the Indigenous communities around. Sudbury is kind of a role model for the world on how do you do mining right. And we're fortunate here that we have 2 companies that are operating in the Sudbury region. But as someone that's been doing this for 35 years, in my career, I've only had a handful of opportunities to invest in the Sudbury region. One of them was FNX, and we made a lot of money on that one. And now we have 2 very interesting opportunities, and it's just a rarity. So I just wanted to make that comment. We're going to move on to Jay and Camino.
Great, thanks a lot, Jonathan. I'll just unmute myself here. So Camino, yeah, just following up on what you were saying, Jonathan. I mean, what Sudbury has done for the nickel market, Peru and Chile have done for the copper market. You know, Chile's #1 in the world, and Peru #2 in the world in terms of copper production. So Camino is positioned itself as being that copper company to fill the void in the pipeline that we see on the discovery side of the copper business. And most of you know me from my days with Western Lithium, which is now Lithium Americas, one of the leading lithium developers. And we got behind lithium in 2008 because we felt it was the enabling metal for electric transportation. And now getting into copper, we believe for the same reason, copper is the enabling metal for everything else that is electrified, which is renewable energy, which is renewing our grid systems, our communication systems, and as Jonathan had alluded to at the beginning, also for electric transportation in terms of the car. There's as much copper in a lithium battery as there is lithium. So what Camino has done over the last year is positioned a few assets. We're just finalizing an acquisition with Dundee Capital on a major porphyry system in Peru. But all these assets are on major geological systems that we believe can host major discoveries. So what we've got, I'll be talking about some forward-looking statements here throughout my presentation. We've got 3 assets now in Camino. Los Chapitos, which is our flagship IOCG discovery. We've got Maria Cecilia, which we will be finalizing with Dundee Capital over the next week or so to finalize the acquisition of that porphyry system in Peru. And then we've got Plata Dorada, which is a very high-grade copper and silver system. And what we like about these projects is, you know, through the last 10 years, I mean, Igor mentioned it, there's been a lack of discoveries within the copper industry. These are projects that were financed through the very hard times over the last 5 years, and these are all brand new projects. And so in the case of Los Chapitos, we've had 20,000 meters of drilling. In the case of Maria Cecilia, we've had 30,000 meters of drilling. And Plata Dorada is still at the greenfield stage. But both of these projects, Los Chapitos and Maria Cecilia, are on major geological systems that we believe can be the new discoveries in front of this big copper cycle that everyone is really looking for. So we think that, you know, the risk reward that we're taking here with these projects, which have been drilled, is very sensible in terms of how we go about our business philosophy. All the projects that we've mentioned there, we own 100% of. So, which is an important aspect for a junior company. There's no major back-end payments that are required as we go through our exploration cycle here. I'll start with our Los Chapitos project. It was first drilled. Again, these are new discoveries. It was drilled in 2017 when a discovery hole was made, grading about 1.3% soluble copper over an intercept of about 106 meters. When you walk across a property, it's pretty obvious that you're in a big mineralized system. What you see here is all the artisanal work that extends to the north of our property. But the main zone of mineralization, you can see the green copper outcrops, extends for over 8 kilometers along one of our northwest structures, which is the Diva zone. And we now have a parallel structure, which is the Atico zone, which shows all the same artisanal mining and similar outcrops. So what we did in 2017, and then we followed up in the fall of 2019, is went back and drilled some of these outcrops. And you can sort of get a sense of the type of intercepts, ore grade intercepts, you know, that we're starting to see on the property. 95 meters, 96 meters, 91 meters of 0.7, 0.9, 0.8% copper. So this is in the central part of our system where we've done our drilling. And now what we plan to do in 2021, starting in July of next month, is to extend, you know, the drilling along this corridor, this 8-kilometer corridor in the Diva trend, and find more intercepts that we've drilled in the past. The intercepts you've seen there are starting to develop an internal maiden resource, you know, on the project. And what we expect to do is build a series of these pods, or what we call mantos, to develop an SXEW project, which is very possible to capitalize in a junior mining company. But the great thing about Los Chapitos is what lies below. And what we also are drilling for is the potential sulfide feeder that would extend below the oxide zone. We have sniffs of that in some of our drill program to date, hitting chalcopyrite at the bottom of some of these holes. And the real model that we see for Los Chapitos is the Mina Justa mine, which is located about 100 kilometers north of us along the coast of Peru. And that is now a 400 million ton IOCG deposit grading about 0.7% copper. And it is Peru's newest mine. It's just been capitalized for $1.6 billion and it will start production this month. On the project, you can see we've got a large land package. I mentioned the two major trends, the Diva trend, the Atajo trend. That's within a 220 square kilometer package. And what we did is we went out and sampled some of the artisanal workings that you saw earlier, just recently in the spring. And if you see at the top corner of this presentation, we're getting 3% up to 9 grams of 3% copper and up to 9 grams a ton gold in those workings. So our plan is to go out and drill to the north after we complete our drilling, which starts in July, to the south on this project. Our second project is our Maria Cecilia porphyry acquisition. We announced this about a month ago, or 2 months ago, I should say, with Denham Capital. I was on the property in March of this year in Peru to do our final due diligence on this project. And what you see here is, again, this is a project that was first identified and drilled in 2015 and 16. And what they've done is they've drilled, to the far left, you see the Toro Punto ore body. To the far right, you see the Emmanuel ore body. There's 90 million tons at 0.3% copper there. They had intercepts of 1 to 300 meters of 0.2 to 0.3% copper with 0.2 to 0.3% gold, grams a ton gold, ratio within that resource. What they've done is they've drilled, 2 porphyry centers. And what we're interested in is the central porphyry center, which is Maria Cecilia, which you see right in the middle there. And Copper Expert went into the district in 2016 and recognized that this was a very large porphyry district, and that the heart of the district and where we believe the hot zone is, and where we could have better gold and copper ratios is right in the center of Maria Cecilia. So there's been $28 million spent on this project over the last 5 years. We are stepping onto the project this year, and we'll be drilling that central porphyry center, which will be the 3rd porphyry center that we've drilled at the project. And you can see the work that's been done on surface. There is a loose analogy to the Antamina mine, which is 100 kilometers away. And that Antamina is a major skarn system with a porphyry located adjacent to it. With the Antamina case, you get high-grade copper in the skarn, and then you get a relatively high-grade porphyry next to that. And what we're seeing with the surface work that we've done is also we get high-grade copper up to 3 to 6% in the skarn, and next to that we get stockworks and porphyries where we do see grade, in this case 27 meters with 0.35% copper, but our porphyry grades up to 0.9%. And 0.5% in the 2 porphyry outcrops that we've seen there. So what we'll be doing is lining a drill up on this project to the right of the screen there, drilling into the system. And below the system, if you saw in my previous slide, there's a major magnetic anomaly that we see there. And the size of that anomaly compared to what we've drilled at Emmanuel would suggest that there's many hundreds of tons of resource that could potentially be drilled, on a project like this. Our last project, and I'll just go over it quickly here, Plata Dorada. Again, this is up near Cusco in the Andes. And every time we go out to the project, we come back with more high-grade results on the vein systems that we see there. The best veins that we're getting are, 5% copper, 1,500 grams a ton silver, over 0.3 meters. And we've continued to expand the portfolio that we have in that area, or the land base, as we grow it. And the analogy that we would have here would be something similar to a Cozamin mine in Mexico, where they're drilling a copper silver system. It's a relatively small mine to build. Cozamin costs about $50 million to build, but it's a very rich mine in that it's produced over $450 million in cash flow over its lifespan. So for a junior company, I think we've got two world-class exploration properties in our Los Chapitos IRCG, number 1, and in our Maria Cecilia porphyry camp, number 2. And that's where we believe that we can, as an exploration company, we can gain the most value at the drill tip with our program that we have planned for this year. And we'll continue to grow the company on that basis. We've just completed a raise of $8 million. And so as we go through, we're fully permitted to drill to the south of Los Chapitos starting in July, and our other permits will come in throughout the year to drill to Chapitos North and Maria Cecilia. And I'll leave it there for Q&A.
Jay, we have both questions of the same question. Can you comment on the political landscape and the election results and how that'll affect you?
Yeah, so we made a decision to go in Peru for the reasons I mentioned earlier. It's the second largest producer, so we're there now. So we're, looking at the election, I mean, there's been a lot of negative sentiment going into the election. I think, like you see in most cases, markets on the other side of the election, when we see a path forward for the country, I think we'll get a re-rating going forward in a positive way. And the reason I mention that is because there's a lot of division in the world. We're seeing that in Peru. We're seeing that in all elections around the world. But with that division comes collaboration, at the levels of Congress, and you've got presidents that set a vision when they get elected, and then they need to, have a platform to govern the country. And we believe that, what we've seen with Peru over the last decade, what we'll continue to see over the next decade is Peru has a very good mining law. They have a competitive fiscal regime that's brought in major investment, Las Bambas, Quellaveco, Mourre next to us. I mean, those are tens of billions of dollars worth of investment in the copper industry. And there's another $60 billion of investment slated for the copper industry going forward. So whoever is governing the country of Peru, that's not going to be lost. The best thing for Peru is to remain stable, to look after its best industry, which is copper, which makes up 10% of its GDP. And if you want to improve on social programs mining basically helps a lot of these areas that are in these rural areas that require more investment and more social support. And we think the mining industry is the best industry to help in some of those areas.
Okay. Thank you. And I think we gotta get moving. So I'm gonna open up to Grant Mourre of Sudbury Platinum.
I think there we go. Well, thanks, Jonathan. And since I'm the last one, I guess I'll have to speed through this. And I'll just give a kind of an introduction to who SPC Nickel is. And we're much like Jason's story, we're a newly listed junior exploration company on the TSXV. We listed in March of this year. The company was formed back in 2013. And its primary objective of its time was to explore for magmatic sulfides in North America. So looking primarily for copper, nickel, platinum, and palladium. And having spent most of my career exploring for nickel and PGEs, I know how challenging these deposits are. And we wanted to give ourselves the best opportunity to be successful that we could. So we really focused in on the Sudbury Basin and the Sudbury Mining Camp as one of the premier nickel copper PG districts in the world. And we've been able to assemble a couple of high quality projects within the basin that we've been exploring over the past couple of years and that we're aggressively exploring right now. And you know, really at the heart of the SPC story is the Sudbury mining camp. And Jason and Jonathan both touched on a lot of these points. But you know, Sudbury is a really unique spot in the world. It's, you know, not only as a giant mining camp, but it is arguably one of the largest nickel camps in the world, maybe second only to Norilsk in Russia. You know, it's got a long history of mining life, 125 years. So with that comes all the infrastructure, the workforce, the social license, everything that you need to explore, develop, and build a mine is right here in our backyards. And that's what makes Sudbury so unique. It's close to major centers, transportation routes, everything is here in Sudbury. You know, it's dominated by 3 major companies, being Vale, Glencore, and KGHM. And they control probably 90 to 95% of the property position within the basin. There's lots of infrastructure, 2 active mills, which, as Jason pointed out, have unutilized capacity right now. There's smelters. I mean, this picture alone, you can see the Vale Clarabelle mill is in the foreground. Off in the distance on the left is the Vale smelter, nickel refinery, and there's about 4 head frames in this kind of 20-kilometer view that you can see from this image. And this is just outside of our office in Sudbury. You know, and the basin continues to deliver. There's new deposits found on a regular basis. These are large, high-grade polymetallic deposits. So it's not just a nickel camp. In fact, Sudbury probably produces, over the last 5 or 6 years, has produced more copper on a yearly basis than nickel, and a lot of precious metals. So again, high-grade, high-value deposits. And you know, I think it's always interesting to point out, just alone last year, Vale produced around 50,000 tons of nickel. And if you start looking at nickel forecasts to meet the growth for EVs, you know, in the next 10 years, you'll see numbers anywhere from 500,000 tons to 1 million tons of nickel that are going to be required to meet the demands for EVs. And you know, so just to put that in comparison, that's 10 times the production of Vale and Sudbury. So that's a lot of new nickel mines that have to come online. So all the junior nickel companies out there, I mean, basically all these deposits are required to meet this demand for Class 1 nickel. Just a quick image of the Sudbury Basin. You know, for the most part, these shows the producing deposits in black, historic deposits in gray, and some of the key development projects in green. Most of the main deposits in the Sudbury Basin sit along the edge of the basin or in these kind of radiating structures that extend out from the basin called offset dikes. And you know, Sudbury is unique because it's so big, but its history is also unique in the fact that it was formed from a meteorite impact. So Sudbury is, you know, there's no other place like it in the world, which makes it extremely exciting to explore in this basin. You know, we have put together 2 quality projects in the Sudbury Basin. Our Lockerbie East project, which is adjacent to the past producing Lockerbie mine. And it has, you know, historic resources of about 100 million pounds of contained nickel and copper. And our flagship property is our Air Kid property, and that's located down in the southwest corner on what's called the Worthington Offset Dike. So we have, you know, good properties within a great camp, but our properties are also adjacent to really, you know, either past producing mines, or development projects. So I'll just kind of focus in a little bit on the Air Kid project quickly. This is a long section through the what's called the Worthington Offset Dike, and it just puts our property positions in perspective. And ours is the area in the dash blue, and that's called the Air Kid property. It represents about a 1.6 kilometer strike length of the Worthington Offset Dike. And adjacent to us, 1.8 kilometers away, is the producing Totten mine that's owned by Vale. That was discovered or put in production in 2010. So that's the most recent mine that was put into production in Sudbury. It's a large high-grade deposit, so over 10 million tons of about 3.5% combined nickel copper, so high-value ore. You know, they start at around 900 meters, this deposit, and goes down to 1,500 meters at least, and probably deeper. To the northeast is the Victoria deposit, which was found in 2010 by the FNX, which Jonathan touched on and Jason was involved with. And this is one of the largest, highest grade nickel sulfide deposits in probably the world that's not into production yet. It's being developed right now. And this is even higher grade, pushing over 14 million tons of 5% combined nickel copper. And then, that's without being underground. So likelihood of that deposit gets significantly larger. But these are deep deposits. Victoria starts at about 1,000 meters and goes well past 2,000 meters. But in a lot of places that's considered deep. Sudbury, that's not. They're developing mines right now at 2,500 meters, producing ore at that sorts of depths and making discoveries well past that depth. And there's kind of a rule of thumb in Sudbury that grade seems to increase with depth. I don't know if that's necessarily been explained well, but it does seem to be the case. And our property is sandwiched in between these two world-class assets. It's seen historic production back in the 50s and 60s, very shallow, down to about 300 meters. And we have the same geology, the same style of mineralization. We're exploring with the same exploration techniques. And really, we've raised about $7.8 million at the end of 2020, of which we've got $3.6 million earmarked for exploration on the Air Kid property. And we're looking our objective is to make a discovery on this property similar to the Dutina or Victoria. So we're talking exploring down below the 1,000-meter mark for a significant polymetallic high-grade nickel copper PGM deposit. As well, we'll be exploring some targets that we have shallower underneath the past producing mines. Just quickly to wrap things up so I can stay within the 5 minutes. We have about 111 million shares outstanding. Market cap is about 23 million. Well positioned financially with about $7 million in the bank. Some of our larger shareholders, of which Dundee Goodman is a major shareholder. We think the company is well positioned for the forecasted growth in the battery and green metals markets. So the nickel, copper, platinum, palladium. These are the metals that are going to be needed for the electrification moving forward. And there's no other better place to look than in Sudbury, where all these metals are in one spot. We've managed to put together a couple quality assets within the basin, which is pretty rare. There's not very many junior companies actively exploring within the Sudbury Basin. These deposits can be large, high-grade polymetallic deposits. So, over the last 10 years, we've had pretty depressed nickel prices, but higher copper and precious metals. So the polymetallic nature of these ores really helps the companies in town here survive the fluctuations that we see in the markets. And for example, ore from Dutina and Victoria ranges between $600 to $1,000 per ton. So it's high value, high grade material. We're well financed. We feel like the stock is undervalued relative to our other peers in the nickel space. We've got 2 exploration programs underway, about a 15,000 meter program that started towards the end of March on our Air Kid project, and also another project we have, which is a copper, nickel, palladium, platinum property, much in the same geological environment as the Shakespeare deposit that's called our Janes project that is we're actively drilling right now. I think that wraps it up.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Okay. We just invite anyone to go and post questions in the chat box at the bottom. I think just picking up on something that you said earlier, Grant, you said it seems to be particularly for this area that grade tends to increase with depth. I'm just curious from a geological perspective, is there a particular reason for that?
Well, I don't think anyone's, I don't think there's been too much scientific research in it. I mean, I guess one argument that you can make would be that it's a density thing. Nickel sulfides are heavy, so they tend to settle and move progressively deeper. I mean, if it wasn't for that, a lot of these nickel mines in Sudbury wouldn't be able to operate. For example, the Creighton mine is mining at 3,000 meters, and the only reason it can do that is the grade seems to get better as they go deeper.
Okay. Don't know if you've got any questions, Jonathan?
I don't. Keep in mind that I get chances all the time to ask these guys questions. So, but I think, pointing out once again, I mean, Sudbury's a pretty incredible place. And in my career, to be able to have two companies exploring in this region is a rare luxury.
What is your sort of like outlook for the sort of like demand of nickel over the next few years, Grant? Where do you think the price of nickel is going?
Well, that's a tough one because right now the nickel market is still primarily controlled by use for stainless steel, and and I think that ratio or amount increases around about 6% per year. EVs are certainly taking full charge and moving ahead, and I think the nickel forecast looks really good moving forward. I mean, where the price ends up, I'm not sure. I do know that I think it needs to get, I think we need to see some higher prices than where we are right now for a lot of these deposits that come online. But I think we're certainly headed in the right direction. And, we need a lot more of the metals to supply the demand that is forecasted for the next 10, 20, 30 years. So it's in a good place. I think we're at the start of what could be a really long, robust cycle for nickel, copper, and platinum and palladium as well.
And I think you mentioned your Airkid drilling program earlier on. Sorry, so just as a point of like kind of clarification, is like what next in terms of Airkid in your drilling program there?
Well, we should be. We're still actively drilling right now, and I expect that program will be running for the rest of this year into next year. And we will be releasing results as they're available. And ultimately, the goal is to make a significant discovery. At that point, we can accelerate our activities and start moving towards defining a resource.
Thank you very much for that.
Yep.
Well, I want to start by, I think we've already gone past our 1 hour time limit, but I think the time was well used. I want to thank all the companies for participating here. You guys all did an excellent job. I want to thank all the people that tuned in, as well as Mines and Money for hosting this event. Thank you very, very much.
Yeah, and I'd just like to go and thank, once again, our sponsor for this week, which was Dundee Corporation and Dundee Goodman Merchant Partners. We'll see you the same time next week. Everyone have a great Friday and have a great weekend. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.